clay jewelry. I make polymer clay earrings like what I am wearing. These are a custom style, but I will link them down below. If you're interested in making a custom pair for yourself, I will also link my shop in case you want to check that out. So every Tuesday, or at least every week, I put up videos on polymer clay tutorials, tips, tricks, and business stuff, all sorts of good stuff. So if that is something that interests you, please hit that subscribe button down below and turn on post notifications so you get notified every time I post a new video. I always get a lot of questions about clay breaking and bubbling, discoloration, what kind of clay to use. I find that a lot of the time those issues actually stem from having not the best quality of clay for jewelry making. So that is what we're going to talk about today. If you already use some of the clays that I'm going to talk about today and are still experiencing those issues, I do have videos and tutorials on how to fix those kind of issues. I will link those down below for you to check out after you watch this video. But anyways, we're gonna hop right into my favorite clays, as well as clays I think you should steer clear of when making polymer clay jewelry. So grab something to drink, grab a little snack, relax, and let's get into it. So I have 8 different clays with me right now. These are ones that I have used. It's not every polymer clay that is available, but these are the ones that I have tried, and I feel like I have an idea of whether or not I like them and what they're about. Let's start off with the first clay. This clay is actually the first polymer clay that I bought when I decided I wanted to get into polymer clay jewelry making. And I know many of you have probably purchased this as well. It comes in packaging like this, if you can see. I bought this off of Amazon. I literally just Googled polymer clay kit or polymer clay assortment, and one of the first things that pops up is a box with like 50 different colors, and they're all packed like this. Now, this polymer clay is really bad for jewelry making. It's mostly just made for modeling. Maybe if you're a parent and want to do some fun sculpting with your kids, this is that clay. It is incredibly soft. It seems firm now, but once it gets in your hand, it is very tacky, very sticky. It's pretty much impossible to work with as far as not getting fingerprints in it or shaping it how you want to. It's just gooey, and then it bakes poorly. It bakes with a lot of discoloration, bubbling. It is incredibly flexible where it breaks super easily. So this is fun if you want to do something fun with kiddos or nothing too serious, but if you're making jewelry, this isn't for you. Pass on the 50 pack on Amazon. The next clay we're going to talk about is Super Sculpey. It comes in a box like this. You might be able to get something smaller. This I use a ton. It's a translucent. I get the one in beige. It's actually not beige, it's more of a fleshy color. So initially when I bought this clay, this was the second type of clay that I ever used. I didn't really know how to use it. It is very soft. Not as soft as this first clay we talked about, but it is very easy to work with, very blendable. The color, like I said, is a pinky translucent. It's not something you want to use on its own, but it is amazing for blending with other clays. If you have a small pack of clay and you blend that with a decent chunk of this, you'll want to increase the volume of the clay you have so you actually have a good amount of clay to work with. And it also, because it's a little bit softer, helps condition that clay so it's a little bit more flexible and easier to use if you are working with a pretty strong, hard clay. So that softens it up, and I use it basically with all of my jewelry. So the next clay we're going to talk about is Sculpey III. Like this. It says Sculpey and then has a Roman numerals 3. If you have messaged me with issues about your clay, even commented below and had issues, you've probably experienced me asking what kind of clay are you using, and avoid Sculpey III. Now, it's not that Sculpey III is the worst clay ever for anything. I think it's really good, kind of like this first clay, good for sculpting things for fun. It's kind of a beginner's clay. For jewelry, stay away from it. A lot of your problems, if you are using Sculpey 3, are probably stemming from having just not the best clay for jewelry. It bubbles, it has discoloration, it gets very, very soft. Clay comes in different firmness levels, and this is just very soft. It doesn't bake well. It's very flexible once it's baked and breaks easily. So Sculpey 3 is not a favorite for jewelry. It's not sturdy enough. And yeah, I think any polymer clay maker that you talk to who also makes jewelry will say the same thing. Sculpey 3, just don't buy it. It's not for jewelry. The next clay we're gonna talk about is one of my personal favorites to work with. It's Sculpey Souffle. Looks like that. I think they have about 20 something colors. Their color range isn't huge. There's certainly enough colors to blend and make whatever color you want to make. The reason I love Souffle is because one, it is a firm clay, but it is soft enough to mix and mold without your hands getting incredibly tired. And I also really, really love the way that it bakes. Fingerprints don't transfer very easily on it. It kind of has this matte, velvety feel and finish once it's baked, and it's very, very strong. It just gives polymer clay jewelry a beautiful sheen. It's easy to work with, it bakes super well, and it's very durable. So if you're going to start off with any polymer clay for jewelry making, Souffle will be your BFF. A lot of polymer clay makers use Souffle. So next we're gonna talk about Premo. So this is Sculpey Premo. This is a pretty good clay. It is quite firm. A lot of the times you do have to spend quite a bit of time conditioning it. I've definitely, when I've made huge batches of earrings with one color, had to spend like hours conditioning my Premo clay, but it does bake really well and it is very durable. The way that you condition it normally, if it is super firm, is you'll have to chop it in a bunch of little pieces, put some clay conditioning liquid on it, and just mix and mix and mix until it gets that soft kind of pliable texture. But it works really well. I will mix this with Souffle as well if I need to lighten the color or darken the color, or I'm trying to soften up the clay itself. But that's a good choice too if you just want to pick some different colors that aren't available in Sculpey. Premo won't bubble or burn or do anything too crazy like some of the other clays we have talked about. On to the next clay, we have Fimo. Looks like that. This one is open. I actually don't use Fimo that often. It does seem to be a softer clay and a little bit more for sculpting in beginners. I know they have a professional line, but I haven't used it yet. My first impressions of Fimo, I didn't really love it. I think the way that it baked just didn't look refined or professional. It kind of has a more plasticky look once it bakes. It wasn't terrible to work with or anything, but ultimately the end result I just didn't love. I definitely will do a little bit more research and try other clays by them and just see what happens, but don't feel scared of Fimo like you should be scared of Sculpey 3. I've got two more clays to go through with you. These last two clays are ones that are newer for me, and I know a lot of polymer clay jewelry makers use these. They are higher grade and more professional, and maybe a little bit harder to come by depending on where you live. I definitely have to order these online. I can't go to my local craft store, they're just not available. Kato Polyclay is one of them. Now, this is a pretty firm clay. You do have to spend time conditioning it. And the way I condition it is, one, using a little bit of Super Sculpey and also using clay conditioner, which you can purchase. Kato clay is really interesting and unique because it's all very primary, basic colors. If you're the type of person that wants to hand mix all of your colors, Kato clay is really great because they just have super pigmented colors, and with it being firmer, it takes more time to mix, and it also has a very, very strong smell when you open the package. But once it bakes, it's not as strong. It certainly is unique in that respect compared to other clays. None of the other clays that I've worked with have the same kind of like plasticky strong smell. So maybe have a window open or a fan going if you're working with it and you're sensitive to smell. But this clay, they're translucent. Actually, it's probably the top 2 best translucent clays. It bakes very, very cleanly. And the coloration of Kato clay really doesn't change much in the oven. It's just a very strong clay. Like, your jewelry will not break if you're using Kato clay. It takes a little more time to warm it up and get it prepped, but it's certainly worth it for creating jewelry that's not gonna break or bubble or do anything that you don't want it to do. Last clay is Cernit. I think I'm saying that right. This is a huge block. I have a bunch of others. Now, talking about translucency, Cernit is certainly one of the best, and they have an entire line of translucent colors, which is fun if you're trying to make sort of glassy type of pieces. This is a very strong clay, but this is much softer to work with than the Kato, but it's still pretty firm. It takes some time conditioning it. The higher quality of clay and the stronger the clay is after it bakes, usually the more firm it's gonna be when you need to work with it. So don't be scared to work with clay that's really firm. Just know that you're gonna have to condition it quite a bit, and that it will absolutely be worth it in the end because you'll have strong, strong jewelry. You don't want your jewelry breaking, period. So they have a really great translucent line. I have yet to use any of their other colors and lines. I have their whole translucent line, but they have an opal line, they have a nature line, which has kind of a gritty texture to it, which is really fun. I love using clay like that has texture, and they have their basic line. So if I were to recommend you 4 clays to work with if you're a beginner and wanna figure out what to choose, number 1, if you're beginning, Sculpey Souffle. Premo is great. And then if you are more professional and just want to branch out and use something even stronger, I would recommend Kato or Cernit. If you want to learn more about clay, don't forget to subscribe down below, like this video. And if you are having issues with baking your clay and you use the types of clay that I've recommended, check out my links down below for the other videos. I think those will help you. There's a lot of tips, tricks, and techniques there for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.